5 days after the wedding, her body was found lying cold in the backyard, still in her wedding bracelet, still glowing like she never left the altar. The world thought someone murdered her. They were wrong. So wrong. Because Tasha didn't die by human hands. She died breaking something older than hatred, older than violence, older than the world she was born into. A curse. A cruel one. One that lived inside her blood. And she knew it. She always knew it. That's why she left the tape. Her final truth. Her final breath. Her final justice. Tasha grew up with warnings. Soft ones. Sharp ones. Ones wrapped in fear. Her grandmother whispered it first. Never marry. Never wear the ring. Never say the vows. Tasha never understood. She only felt the weight. A shadow following her. Watching her. Waiting. But love changes rules. Love breaks them. Love makes the forbidden feel small. So she married him. 5 days later her body lay still under a gray morning sky. And the world began to whisper. Fast. Cruel. Wrong. The police rushed in. Sirens snapped through the air. Neighbors gathered like vultures. Everyone had a theory. Most pointed at him. The groom. The man still shaking, still crying, still begging her to wake up. But whispers pointed elsewhere too. Toward Johnson. The bitter man 5 blocks down. The one who muttered slurs like he breathed them. A racist with rotting anger. A man who looked at Tasha like she wasn't human. Like she deserved the hate dripping off him. He became suspect number 2. The investigation twisted. Turned. Darkened. Fingerprints analyzed. Footprints measured. Threats uncovered. Old police reports resurfaced. Everyone thought it was him. Or Johnson. Or both. Some unholy tag team of violence. But Tasha had already solved the case before she died. She left a tape. Hidden under the floorboard of her old room. Wrapped in velvet. Warm with meaning. A confession from the only witness who mattered. Her. The detective pressed play. Static crackled. A soft breath trembled through. Then her voice. Calm. Fragile. Already carrying goodbye. If you are hearing this, she paused. A long ache of silence. Then the curse has taken me. The room froze. The detective leaned in. The husband collapsed into his hands. Tasha continued. Her tone steady. Her truth sharp. My family was marked generations ago. One woman broke a promise. A promise tied to love. A promise tied to marriage. Micro cliffhanger. Every sentence heavier than the last. She loved the wrong man. She ran away with him. And the spirits punished every daughter born after. A slow breath. A trembling one. We cannot marry. We cannot speak vows. We cannot bind ourselves to love in the eyes of the living. Another pause. A soft drop of tears hitting a microphone. I married anyway. Because I loved him. Because the curse ends with sacrifice. Her voice cracked. But she kept going. Brave. Final. I want the world to know it wasn't murder. It wasn't hate. It wasn't him. A heartbeat of silence. It was destiny. Another. And I'm glad I chose it. The tape clicked off. Soft. Devastating. The room stayed frozen. Broken. Changed. Police cleared her husband within hours. Every accusation collapsed. Every whisper died. Johnson's hatred was exposed publicly anyway, not for murder, but for the poison he spread for years. His neighbors spoke out. His victims testified. His mask shattered. Justice touched every corner, every piece, every wound. But the real justice was deeper, quieter, sacred. Tasha didn't die in vain. The curse ended. Her lineage freed. Future daughters saved. Because she chose love over fear. Courage over survival. Sacrifice over silence. Morning broke slow. Heavy. Colorless. News vans circled the apartment like hungry shadows. Everyone wanted a headline. No one wanted the truth. Not the one she left. Not the one she died for. Her husband walked out with the tape still trembling in his hand. Not speaking. Not breathing normally. Not the same man. Grief changed him, bent him, hollowed him out like a burned house. But the worst part? The guilt. The kind that crawls into a man's chest and claws at him every hour, every minute, every heartbeat. He kept replaying her voice, over and over, like a prayer, like a punishment, like a promise. The detective stayed close. He could see the break, the fracture, the storm inside him. Tasha saved you. A simple truth, a brutal one, but the husband couldn't accept it. Not yet. Not with her ring still warm in his pocket. Word spread fast. Faster than compassion. Faster than reason. At first they whispered murder. Now they whispered myth. Curses aren't real. She was manipulated. He did something. He had to. People don't just die from superstition. Everyone became an expert. Everyone thought they knew her story better than she did. But the tape was real. Her voice was real. The curse was real in the only way pain is real. Deep in the body. Deep in the past. Deep in the blood. The family held the truth quietly. Always had. Always would. Because some histories don't need belief. They only need consequences. While the world argued the supernatural, something else happened. Something dark. Something long overdue. Johnson's secret surfaced. Not just the slurs. Not just the threats. But a pattern, years of harassment. Years of targeting women like Tasha. Calling them names in the street. Leaving notes on doors. Sending messages laced with hate. The police uncovered everything. They stacked the reports in one pile. Thick. Heavy. Rotten. He had hurt too many. For too long. With too much pleasure. The detective didn't need magic to see this justice. He only needed the truth. And now it was all out. Front page. Bold letters. Black ink. No more hiding. The world turned its face toward him. Hard. Unforgiving. Cold. Not for murder. But for something deeper. The kind of violence that hides behind smiles and fences. Until someone brave enough shines a light on it. That someone was Tasha. Even in death she exposed him. Her truth weighed more than his lies. The detective visited her childhood home late that evening. The smell of old books clung to the air. The walls held a quiet ache. A memory in every corner. Her mother sat by the fire. Her eyes tired. Her voice soft. Carrying years of secret. She wasn't the first. A chilling hush. A truth buried too long. The curse began with Amara. A great-grandmother, beautiful, fearless, and in love with a man she wasn't allowed to choose. She married him in secret. The spirits knew. The punishment followed. Every daughter born after carried the mark. The warning. The cost. You can love, her mother whispered. But you cannot bind your soul to another. Not in vows. Not in marriage. Tasha was the first to defy it. Fully. Openly. Bravely. She knew it would take her. Her mother's hands shook. But she believed breaking the curse was worth dying for. A heavy silence spread. Thick as fog. Sharp as truth. The detective drove home in the dark. His hands tightened on the wheel. His mind spinning like a storm. Destiny? He wanted to fight it. Wanted to call it superstition. Wanted to believe logic always wins. But something deep inside him whispered otherwise. Some truths aren't meant to be explained. Only witnessed. And he had witnessed enough. He saw the way her body lay. Peaceful. Untouched. Like she crossed a threshold between worlds no one else could see. He saw the pulse of grief in her husband. The honesty. The raw ache. The kind that cannot be faked. He saw the fear in her mother's eyes. Not of men. But of legacy. No poison. No wounds. No signs of struggle. Just an ancient debt finally paid. At home, he sat on the floor surrounded by wedding photos. The ones they took too quickly. Too joyfully. Too unaware of the countdown. He pressed the tape to his chest, willing her back, begging the universe to undo its cruelty, to take him instead, to trade lives, to trade fates. But grief doesn't bargain. Pain doesn't negotiate. Love doesn't bend for death. He cried until the sun rose, until his breath shook, until the silence answered him with nothing and everything at the same time. The file closed, stamped, sealed, done. But the detective lingered in the doorway as her husband stood alone, backyard empty. Grass still marked where her body once lay, a scar in the shape of goodbye. You gave her what she wanted, the detective whispered. Love. Enough to fight fate. Enough to break it. The husband nodded. Barely. Slowly. Painfully. Justice was strange like that. Sharp. Soft. Cruel. Kind. It doesn't always look like handcuff. Sometimes it looks like freedom. Bought with a life. The backyard stayed quiet as the first wind brushed the grass. Almost like a touch. Almost like a final blessing. And somewhere beyond sorrow, Tasha finally rested, knowing her daughters and their daughters would live without fear. Days passed. Slow. Sharp. Dripping like cold rain. Her husband moved through the world like a shadow wearing human skin. People stared. People whispered. People kept wondering if he was guilty, even when the truth was written in her own voice. He didn't fight it. Didn't snap back. Didn't defend himself. He was too busy surviving the silence she left behind. Every morning he woke forgetting she was gone. Every night he remembered all over again. A cycle. A wound. A truth that kept cutting. He slept on her side of the bed because it smelled like her. He played the tape until the words carved themselves into his bones. But grief isn't quiet. It roars. It bleeds. It claws. And one evening it finally cracked him. Split him open like lightning hitting a tree. He stood in the backyard. The same patch of ground where her body once rested. The grass still lighter. Still bruised. Still remembering. He knelt. Fingers trembling. Heart pounding like a broken drum. Why did you leave me? The words shattered out of him. Raw. Ugly. Real. No answer. Just wind. Soft. Cold. Almost gentle. He didn't know if he was talking to her or the sky or the curse or the emptiness inside him. Maybe all of them. Maybe none of them. His grief was so loud it felt like the world paused just to listen. A car pulled up. Headlights dim. Engine sighing. The detective walked across the yard with the heavy steps of a man who carried too many secrets on too many lonely nights. He didn't bring paperwork. Didn't bring updates. Didn't bring questions. He brought truth, and the courage to speak it. She didn't die because of you. A single line. Sharp. Clear. Final. The husband didn't look up. Couldn't. The detective continued. She chose love over fear. She chose you over her ancestors. She chose freedom over fate. Each word hit like a hammer, crushing, healing, becoming something new. The husband finally looked up, eyes empty, face pale, soul tired. Why would she do that? His voice broke, shattered. The detective stepped closer. Close enough for truth, close enough for compassion, because she believed love was stronger than curses. Because she believed you deserved a life without ghosts chasing your children. Because she believed her death could save everyone who came after her. The husband collapsed again. But this time he didn't fall apart. He emptied himself, letting pain spill out instead of keeping it inside like poison. While grief unfolded in the backyard, Tasha's family prepared something sacred. Something centuries old. Something done only when a curse breaks. A wake of release, a ritual of freedom, a ceremony of final goodbyes. They gathered in the old family home. Candles lit, doors open, windows breathing with the night, portraits covered in cloth to let her spirit pass, shoes arranged in circles to mark the paths of ancestors, salt lines drawn to keep sorrow from following her into the next world. Her grandmother's sister spoke first. Voice trembling with age and pride. The chain is broken tonight. Because she chose courage. Because she chose love. Because she walked into death and came out holding freedom. The family cried. Softly. Deeply. Rightfully. Tasha's mother held a single candle. Her flame shook like a heartbeat. She did what none of us could, she whispered. She freed us. A gust of wind blew through the room. Not harsh, not cold, just present. The candle didn't go out. It steadied, brightened, glowed, and every woman there felt the shift. The curse was gone. For the first time in 4 generations the room felt light. The next day, her mother arrived at the apartment. A soft knock, a long pause, a moment heavy with unfinished love. Her husband opened the door with the hollow eyes of a man holding too many storms inside. She handed him a small box, wrapped in cloth, tied with a thread the color of dawn. This was hers. Her voice quivered. She wanted you to have it if she didn't return. His hands shook as he untied the thread, unfolded the cloth, opened the box. Inside was her vows, handwritten, trembling ink, words soaked in love and sacrifice. "I'm sorry," her mother whispered. "I'm so sorry you never got to hear them at the altar." He pressed the paper to his chest, like a shield, like a wound, like the last piece of her heart he could still hold. He unfolded them, short lines, like poetry, like truth, like goodbye. "I marry you knowing it may cost me everything. But loving you has given me more than life ever did. If my blood must pay the price, then let it be paid in love. For you. For us. For the daughters who will never fear what I feared." His legs gave out. Silent collapse, tears falling like rain on paper. Her mother knelt beside him, held the grief, held the weight. "Tasha didn't die because she married you," she whispered. "She married you because she was ready to die for something bigger." That night the sky stayed open. Stars scattered like embers. The world oddly quiet. And somewhere beyond all the sorrow, Tasha rested knowing her story was finally being told with truth instead of fear. The world moved on, fast, careless, hungry for the next tragedy. But her husband didn't, couldn't, wouldn't. He drifted through the apartment like a ghost wearing the memory of a man. Every corner hurt, every silence echoed, every object breathed her name. Grief wasn't just inside him. It lived in the walls, in the furniture, in the air, a presence that refused to soften. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped pretending to be okay. He played the tape night after night, not for answers, not for closure, just to hear her breathe one more time. The detective checked in. Her mother visited. Friends tried to help, but grief builds its own world, and he lived in it alone. One morning he woke on the couch, shaking, sweating, aching from another nightmare. But something on the floor caught his eye. A glint, soft, golden. Her wedding bracelet, the one she wore the day she died, the one still on her wrist when they found her. He swore it wasn't there before. He swore he packed it away. He swore he hid it in a drawer to avoid breaking all over again. But here it was, in the middle of the living room, facing him, waiting. He picked it up, cold, heavier than gold should ever feel. His breath shook. His heartbeat stumbled. Something inside him cracked open wide, painful true. He whispered her name, barely, fragile, like it might shatter the room. The air shifted, just slightly, just enough. He didn't believe in the supernatural, didn't believe in curses, didn't believe in signs. But grief makes believers out of everyone. That night he dreamt for the first time since she died. Not nightmares, not looping memories, not guilt wearing her voice. A dream, a real one, clear, sharp, alive. He stood in a field, tall grass brushing his legs, wind humming through the earth. A horizon stretched wide like the world was finally big enough for the truth. And she stood there, not fully, not clearly, but enough. A silhouette of light, a warmth shaped like her, a presence wrapped in peace. He couldn't see her face, but he knew. Every part of him knew. She walked closer, quiet steps, soft ground, a glow around her like morning sun after years of darkness. He reached for her, desperate, shaking, terrified she'd vanish. She placed her hand over his heart. Warm, real, steady, and a voice inside him, not from her lips, but from the air itself, whispered, "Live. For me. For the life I freed you to have. For the daughters who will come. For the promise we made in our own way." He sobbed in the dream, collapsed in her glow, held by her light instead of her body. When he woke, he wasn't healed. Not close, but something shifted. Small, quiet, real. He breathed without pain for the first time since she left. While he battled grief, the detective battled something else, questions. Ones that refused to die. Ones that clawed at logic. Ones that kept him awake long after midnight. He revisited the tape, listened deeper, closer, line by line, breath by breath. Then he caught it, a faint sound buried under her voice, a whisper of wind, a tremor, soft, rhythmic, ancient. He enhanced the audio, filtered it, magnified it. The sound grew clearer, a chant, low, echoing, in a language he didn't know. He froze, blood cold, heart thudding through his ribs. This wasn't background noise. It wasn't static. It wasn't anything human. It was something older, darker, bound to her bloodline. The detective leaned back, shock spreading through him like cold water. The curse wasn't symbolic. It wasn't metaphor. It wasn't superstition. It was real, alive, present on the tape as she died. The detective exhaled, long shaking. This was no longer just a case. It was a legacy, a truth buried deeper than he ever imagined. And he wasn't done. Not anymore. He drove to her family home, knocked, entered quietly, explained what he heard, what he found, what wouldn't let him sleep. Her mother's face fell. A grief older than her years passed through her eyes. "I was afraid of this," she whispered. "We kept the truth hidden to protect our daughters." The detective leaned in, heart pounding, curiosity sharp, fear sharper. What truth? Her mother gestured for him to sit. She didn't speak for a moment. She gathered the silence like a shawl. Then she told him. Not the rumor. Not the version whispered to children. Not the soft-edged story Tasha grew up hearing. The real one. The brutal one. The origin of the curse. And as she spoke, the detective realized this was much bigger than one life. One death. One sacrifice. It was a saga. A war. A wound passed from mother to daughter for generations. And Tasha was the first to end it. Outside, wind brushed through the trees. A whisper. A sigh. A promise. Somewhere beyond the veil, Tasha watched the world she saved finally begin to understand her story. And she rested just a little deeper. The detectives sat frozen. The tape still spun. Static hissed. Tasha's voice lingered in the air like smoke. Heavy. Soft. Final. Johnson swallowed fear like a stone. His shoulders shook. But his eyes held something darker. A memory he tried to bury. The officers watched him closely. Because guilt has a scent. And it rises. Before anyone could speak, another sound crackled through the old cassette player. A second tape. One they hadn't pressed play on yet. They looked at each other. Nervous. Alert. They inserted it. A click echoed through the room. Then silence. A long, suffocating silence. Until a whisper broke it. Not Tasha. Older. Fragile. Fractured. Her grandmother. If you're hearing this, the curse has reached another generation. The room froze. Static crackled like breaking bones. Our women were marked long before they were born. Bound to the first promise ever broken in this bloodline. The detectives leaned in. A promise of love. A promise betrayed. And betrayal leaves shadows. A door slammed somewhere in the precinct. The officers jolted. But the tape continued. The curse deepened. And justice demanded its voice. The tape hissed again. Our ancestors warned us. Do not marry until the bloodline is cleansed. Do not bind your soul to anyone until the old vow is broken. The detectives exchanged confused glances. This was no longer just a case. It was a legacy. a wound stretching centuries. The tape cracked with another whisper. One daughter must choose. One daughter must pay. The sound of wind chimes trembled faintly behind the voice. Then, Tasha knew. The officers stiffened. She always knew. Static roared for a second, like a scream trapped in metal. Then, she is the one who breaks it. The tape stopped. The room went still. Air held its breath. Outside the interrogation window, Tasha's husband stood with his head low. He trembled like a man carrying both love and grief. The detective stepped out. He looked up, eyes red, hands shaking, voice barely holding itself together. I told you, his breath cracked. She wasn't running from me. She was running toward something. Silence wrapped around them. He held out a small velvet pouch, the kind used for charms, or curses. Inside was a ring, but not a wedding ring. Oh, blackened, heavy, a ring passed down for generations. Tasha had hidden it before their wedding. Her husband spoke again. She said once she put this on, the curse would end, and someone else wouldn't have to die. His tears fell slowly. She knew what she was doing. A detective's throat tightened. Another micro cliffhanger. Because the story wasn't done. Not yet. They played the final seconds of the tape. Tasha's voice returned. Soft, broken, but brave. If you found me, don't blame him. Don't blame anyone. A breath. A pause. I chose this. I chose freedom for the girls who come after me. Another breath. Let my husband live. Let him heal. Let this family finally be free. Static swallowed her words. The tape clicked off. Silence wrapped the precinct in a cold blanket. Even Johnson stopped shaking. His fear shifted into something softer. Something ashamed. The detectives closed their notepad. No arrest. No villain made of flesh. Just a truth heavier than any crime. And a justice no courtroom could deliver. Outside, the sun dipped behind the horizon. The sky turned a deep, mournful gold. Tasha's husband walked out alone. But not broken. Because her last act was love. Pure, fierce, defiant. A love that ended 100 years of suffering. A love that rewrote her family's fate. A love that turned tragedy into freedom. The wind brushed past him. Soft, warm, almost like a goodbye. He closed his eyes, and whispered into the fading light. She broke the curse. Some sacrifices are not losses. They are legacies. Night settled over the neighborhood like a heavy cloak. Cold, still, listening. Word of Tasha's death spread in whispers. Whispers that traveled fast. Whispers that cut deep. Candles appeared on the apartment step. 1, then 3, then 20. Light gathering for a life taken too soon. A silent vigil. For a truth only a tape could tell. Inside the precinct, the detectives weren't done. Not yet. Something about the case still gnawed at them. A feeling. A shadow. A thread left hanging. One detective rewound the tape. Not the voice part. The noise behind it. Soft rustling. Wind. Chimes. Something else hidden beneath. He turned up the volume. Static cracked. Then, a faint thud. Then another. Like footstep. Slow. Measured. A presence. The detective's breath hitched. Because the sound wasn't coming from Tasha. It came from behind her. A cliffhanger. A new one. They called in the audio technician. He listened. Eyes narrowing. He isolated the background. Filtered the static. Lifted the frequencies. The room filled with a low hum. Then, a voice. Not Tasha's. Not the grandmother's. Older. Deeper. Ragged with time. Finish the vow. The precinct went silent. The technician paled. Who is that? No one answered. Because the truth was bigger than a name. Outside, a storm gathered on the horizon. Thunder rolled like distant drums. Tasha's husband stood by the candlelit steps. He stared at the flames. At the faces of strangers mourning a woman they never knew. Guilt pressed on his chest. He couldn't shake it. Because he did know something. Something he never told her. a secret he buried under love and fear. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an old folded letter, wrinkled, worn, unopened, addressed to Tasha, from her grandmother. His hands trembled. He had found it weeks ago, before the wedding, before the curse claimed her. But he never gave it to her. He couldn't. He didn't want to scare her, didn't want to lose her. A mistake that now tasted like ash. He opened it with shaking fingers. The ink was faded, but the warning was clear. If she marries, she dies. His knees buckled. A sob broke loose. He dropped the letter. Drop, drop, drop. Rain started to fall. Cold, hard, unforgiving. Thunder cracked the sky. People ran for shelter. He didn't move, because grief can be its own weather. Inside the precinct, the detectives replayed the filtered audio. The deep voice returned. Finish the vow. The hairs on their arms rose. One detective looked at the other. This wasn't just a curse. It was an agreement. A pact. A broken one. A long-dead oath demanding payment. The curse had layers, and justice wasn't done. The storm strengthened. Lightning carved through the sky. Tasha's husband stood alone in the rain. A detective approached slowly, not to accuse, not to interrogate, just to speak the truth. We heard a second voice on the tape. The husband's breath caught. He knew that voice. He heard it once before, as a child, in a nightmare that chased him for years. A nightmare he thought he outran. He looked up, rain blending with tears. He whispered, I think the curse wasn't only on her. Silence. Raw. Sharp. Unavoidable. What do you mean? His voice broke. My family. We were the ones who broke the original vow. The detective froze. A twist. A heavy one. My ancestors made the promise. Hers paid the price. Lightning cracked again. Louder. Closer. He looked at the sky like it could swallow him. Tasha married me knowing she might die. The detective's chest tightened. But I married her knowing I could save her, if I told her the truth. His voice shattered. I didn't. The confession hung in the storm. A new layer of pain. A new wound. A deeper betrayal. But not cruel. Not intentional. Just human. Tragic. The storm eased. Just enough for breath. The detective placed a hand on his shoulder. Not blame. Not anger. Just quiet empathy. Because justice wasn't only about guilt. It was about truth. And truth had finally surfaced. At the precinct, technicians enhanced the tape again. A phrase emerged clearer this time. The debt is paid. The detective played it twice. The voice faded. The curse lifted. The line between worlds finally closed. The case file shut. Not with violence. Not with chains. But with a sacrifice that rewrote a legacy. Outside, dawn crept over the neighborhood. Soft, pale, gentle. The storm washed away the candles. But not the memory. Tasha's husband stood beneath the new light. Eyes swollen. Hands empty. But the air felt different. Lighter. Freer. Because her pain ended with her. And her love didn't. She broke the curse. For every daughter after her. For every woman born into that bloodline. A legacy carved in grief. But ending in freedom. He whispered into the quiet morning. I'll carry your peace. Some endings hurt. But they heal everything behind them. The sun kept rising. But the world felt changed. Like the air itself remembered what it witnessed. Like the ground held the echo of her sacrifice. Tasha's name lingered everywhere. On lips. On candle wax. On trembling hearts. People whispered her story with awe. With fear. With reverence. Because not every death ends a life. Some end a cycle. Inside her home, untouched since that night, detectives began one final sweep. Not for evidence. Not for a killer. For closure. The apartment felt hollow. Like a voice had been pulled out of its walls. Like a heartbeat had gone quiet. They moved slowly. Respectfully. On a table, they found her journal. Not hidden. Just waiting. Leather-worn. edges soft, pages swollen with emotion. The lead detective hesitated, then opened it. The handwriting was small, neat, steady, but the words shook the room. I hear them at night. A pause, a breath between sentences. The ancestors, the women, the ones who never got the chance. Short, cut, precise. The pages turned themselves in the draft. Faster, faster, as if her story wanted out. They tell me it has to end with someone brave. Silence. Someone willing to cut the chain. A chill crawled up the detective's spine. I don't want to die, but I want them to live. He closed the journal. His eyes burned. Because bravery often looks like heartbreak, they continued searching. Under her pillow they found a charm bag. Old fabric, old stitching, old secrets inside. Inside, a small stone, a piece of red thread, and a dried petal that smelled faintly of smoke. A protection charm, but one that had stopped working. Because curses adapt, but so do the people who fight them. Meanwhile, her husband walked through the quiet street. Slow step, heavy step, steps carrying a century of inherited guilt he never asked for. The letter from her grandmother shook in his pocket. Each step made it crinkle. Each breath reminded him of what he hid. He stopped at the edge of the neighborhood, at the old tree line Tasha always avoided. Too still, too silent, too watching. The wind shifted, branches trembled, leaves whispered something ancient. He stepped closer. His chest tightened. His breath shortened. This was where the first vow was made. The original betrayal. The birthplace of the curse. And now, the place where it died. He knelt. Placed the letter at the base of the tree. Let the wind take it. Because the past needed to leave. Needed to lift. Needed to rest. Thunder rumbled soft and distant. A leftover whisper from the night before. Then quiet again. A peaceful quiet. The kind after a storm finally ends. Back at the precinct, a final update came through. Audio analysis complete. The mysterious voice at the end? The one whispering the debt is paid? Not human. Not recent. Not even recorded by the tape. It was embedded in the frequency itself. Like old energy. Old pain. Old presence. Something finally released. The detective leaned back. The case, this strange, fragile case, was closed. But not forgotten. Justice didn't come in handcuffs, or confessions, or courtroom lights. It came in truth. Hard truth. Painful truth. Liberating truth. Tasha freed them. All of them. Her husband returned home with slow, deliberate steps. He unlocked the door. Walked inside. Silence wrapped around him. Thick. Familiar. He touched the chair she used. The scarf she left. The note she stuck on the fridge weeks ago. He didn't break. This time, he breathed. Because grief hurts. But it also opens. It teaches. It reshapes. It heals. He placed her wedding ring on the table. Light caught it softly. The symbol of love, and loss, and sacrifice, and freedom. A ring that once bound a curse, now broke it. He whispered, "You didn't die for nothing." And the room seemed to agree. Softly, warmly, almost like she was near. Outside, dawn stretched fully across the sky. Bright, gentle, new. A world without the curse. A family without the shadow. A future without fear. And somewhere, in the quiet part of morning, a soul finally rested. Some stories end in darkness, but leave the world filled with light. Days passed. Slow. Heavy. Quiet. But grief doesn't move in days. It moves in echoes. And Tasha's echo. It lingered everywhere. Her husband woke each morning to a hollow space beside him. A space that still held her warmth, her scent, her memory. He walked through the rooms like they were sacred halls, not touching too much, not disturbing anything, like breaking the silence might break what was left of her. Grief became ritual. Ritual became routine. Routine became the only way to breathe. Across town, the detectives filed the last pieces of the case. They didn't speak much, didn't smile, didn't celebrate the closure. Some cases end with answers. This one ended with understanding. A softer victory. A quieter justice, but justice all the same. One detective lingered over the folder. Tasha's picture clipped to the front. He pressed his thumb to it gently. A silent promise. We won't forget. Then he placed the folder on the shelf, right between homicide and miracles. But stories don't end in filing cabinet. There was still something left. A thread unpulled. A whisper unanswered. Her journal. They had returned it to her husband. He kept it sealed for days. Fear wrapped around him like vines. Fear of learning more. Fear of hurting more. Fear of knowing she carried pain he never saw. But one morning, just before dawn, he opened the journal. The spine cracked softly. Pages breathed. And her words reached him again. Love didn't kill me. His chest tightened. Fear did. Fear of a curse. Fear of history. Fear of what I cannot control. He swallowed hard. The morning light crept in slowly, brightening her handwriting, softening the pain. But I don't want you to fear. His breath shattered. He closed the journal for a moment, pressed it to his heart, held it like a fragile second chance, then opened it again. When the curse ends, someone still has to live. He blinked, a slow, aching blink. Live for me. Live loud. Live brave. A tear landed on the ink, darkening it, blurring it. He whispered her name, not in grief, but in gratitude. The journal trembled in his hands, pages fluttering slightly, as if touched by a soft, unseen breeze. He didn't move, because sometimes love lingers longer than life. Outside, the neighborhood began to heal. Candles replaced by flowers. Flowers replaced by messages. Messages replaced by silence. A peaceful silence, not the heavy kind, the kind that honors, the kind that remembers, the kind that breathes. But something else was happening, quietly, subtly, unseen. Women in Tasha's family began feeling lighter, breathing deeper, sleeping easier. Nightmares faded, anxiety loosened. A shadow that once curled around their shoulders simply dissolved. They didn't know why, but their bones did, their blood did, their ancestor RS did. A weight lifted, a chain broken, a future reclaimed, all because one woman chose courage over fate. One evening, her husband returned to the tree line, the place where the original vow was broken. The air felt different now, warm, gentle, forgiving. He knelt beside the root, closed his eyes. He didn't speak. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just breathed. For the first time in weeks, he breathed without shaking. A soft breeze brushed his cheek, tender, comforting, almost like a hand, almost like her. Leaves rustled overhead, not in warning, not in mourning, but in peace. He opened his eyes. The world looked new. Because grief changes vision, pain shapes perspective. But healing brings clarity. He stood, stepped back, looked one last time at the place that held so much pain, and then he walked away. Not from her, but toward what she wanted for him. A life, a full one, a fearless one. Night fell gently, stars blinked awake. One star glowed brighter than the rest, steady, soft, warm. He looked up, smiled for the first time since she left. Because some lights don't fade, they guide. Love doesn't end with death. It becomes the light we follow home. Days stretched into weeks. Grief softened at the edges. Not gone, just less sharp, less violent. Her husband learned to move again. Slow step, purpose returning grain by grain. He cleaned the apartment, not to erase her, but to honor her. He folded her scarves gently, traced the spines of her books, watered the plants she loved. Little rituals, pieces of love left behind, pieces he refused to let die. One evening, while sorting her things, he found something he hadn't seen before. A small wooden box, carved, old, edges smooth from generations of hands. The lid had a symbol burned into it, a circle cut by a single line, the mark of her lineage. His heart tightened. Fear crept in. Memories stirred. But he opened it anyway. Inside, a folded cloth, a blackened coin, a thin stack of letters, and one note resting on top. For when the curse is over. His breath trembled, because she wrote this knowing she wouldn't be alive to explain it. He unfolded the cloth first. A bright color, Ghanaian weave, one she wore on special days. He pressed it to his face, closed his eyes, let her scent drift through him. Then he picked up the letters. They were addressed to different women in her family. Cousins, granddaughters unborn. She was writing forward. She was giving them a future. He opened the first envelope. Inside was a simple message. You are free now. Live boldly. His throat tightened. He opened another. No woman in this family will suffer what I did. Another. Love without fear. And another. The curse ended with my choice, not my death. He pressed the letters to his chest, held them like lifelines, like blessings. He whispered into the still room. You saved them all. Outside, the world continued, busy, chaotic, unaware. But inside him, a shift happened. Tasha wasn't just a memory. She was a beginning, a seed planted in every woman her blood touched, a promise fulfilled, a vow restored, and he carried that truth like a torch, burning, bright, alive. At the precinct, one detective couldn't let go. Not of the curse, not of the voice, not of the strange energy woven through the tape. Something didn't sit right. So he returned to the forensic audio lab, pulled up the file again, listened with headphones pressed tight. Static, wind, chimes. Then, in the lowest frequency, a sound he hadn't heard before. A heartbeat, not human, not physical. A pulse older than language, older than memory. A pulse finally silenced. The curse wasn't just broken. It was buried. He sat back in his chair, closed his eyes, exhaled deeply. This case wasn't about crime. It was about legacy, about healing a wound far older than the victim. It made him think about his own family, his own broken places, his own ghost. Tasha's story cracked something open inside him, something tender, something raw. He removed the headphones, whispered into the empty lab. Rest now, because even detectives need closure. Across town, her husband sealed the wooden box, tied it with a thin gold thread. He walked out into the cool night, box in hand, heart steadier than before. He took it to the oldest woman in Tasha's family, her great-aunt. A keeper of stories, a survivor of shadows, a woman who carried the curse in her bones. When she opened the door, her eyes saw everything at once: pain, loss, love, relief. He placed the box in her hand. Gently, respectfully, she held it to her chest, closed her eyes, and the weight left her shoulders instantly. Visibly, her knees trembled. Tears lined her lashes. She whispered, "She did it." For the first time in her long life, her voice held hope. She touched his cheek. "You loved her well." He swallowed the ache rising in his throat. Her hands shook as she opened the box. She saw the letters, the cloth, the coin, and she wept, not from sadness, but from release. Generations of fear washed away in one quiet moment. A legacy undone, a future rewritten, a family reborn. He walked home slowly, empty hands, lighter heart. Street lights flickered softly above him. Leaves rustled. Night hummed. And he felt her again. Not behind him. Not beside him. Within him. The curse was gone. But the love remained. Alive. Bright. Unbreakable. Some heroes never raise a sword. They raise a legacy. The wind shifted. Soft. Cold. Almost familiar. She felt it before she saw anything. A presence. Watching. Listening. She didn't turn. Didn't breathe. Didn't break the moment. Because she knew. Someone had followed her. Not human. Not physical. But very, very real. The curse had weight. A heartbeat. A memory. and it hovered behind her like a shadow she could never outrun. Tasha closed her eyes, steadied herself, felt the dirt beneath her palms. "I'm ready," the ground answered with a tremor, small, but sharp enough to warn her. Bloodline debts never vanish quietly. They cling, they scream, they drag. Her mother once whispered it. "Love will be your undoing, and your rebirth." At 10 years old, she laughed. At 15, she doubted. At 25, she understood. The curse didn't want her husband, didn't want Johnson, didn't want justice from the living. It wanted her, her spirit, her choice, her acceptance. She opened her eyes. The backyard blurred. Colors melted. Shapes folded inward. Reality cracked around the edges. Tasha's breath caught. This was the passage. The threshold every woman in her lineage feared. The one none survived without surrendering something precious. Most surrendered love. Some surrendered sanity. A few surrendered their future. But she chose to surrender herself. And in that sacrifice there was strength. There was defiance. There was finality. She lifted the recorder again. Her fingers steadied. The curse pressed closer. Its cold seeped into her bones, slowed her pulse, dimmed her sight. Still, she spoke. Her voice cracked, but the conviction held. Someone has to end this. The backyard brightened for a moment. Just a blink, just enough to feel like dawn. Then everything darkened again. She felt a pull, gentle at first, then fierce, tugging her soul toward the center of her family's oldest wound. She didn't resist, didn't run, didn't plead. Tasha leaned into it, because this was the only way, the only ending, the only justice. Her chest tightened, her pulse slowed, her body swayed. The recorder slipped from her hand, hit the ground, kept recording. Her shadow flickered, bent, then disappeared from the earth like a candle snuffed out. Silence fell, not human silence, ancestral silence, heavy, sacred, final. And in that silence, the curse broke. A sharp crack in the air, a ripple across the soil, a release older than memory. Something let go of her family, something ancient, something dark. And the night exhaled for the first time in centuries. Her body lay still, but the weight gone. Her spirit drifted, but the suffering ended. Justice at last had chosen her side, and in the quiet after the storm, the world felt new. Morning crawled in slow, gray light, soft wind, a world unaware of what it had gained, and what she had given up. Her body remained untouched, peaceful, still. But the air around her? Different, lighter, freer. The curse had dissolved like smoke, faded into nothing, burned out by the weight of her choice. And far beyond the backyard, across the invisible line where the living and the lost sometimes meet, Tasha drifted. Not in pain, not afraid, not bound. She felt warmth, warmth she never knew in life, warmth that touched the deepest ache inside her chest. A presence formed beside her, soft, ancient, feminine, not a ghost, not a monster, not the curse, but the first woman who'd ever endured it, the one who'd failed to break it, the one who'd passed the wound down generation after generation, the one who never forgave herself. She reached for Tasha with trembling hands of light, and the moment they touched, a memory flooded through both of them. A wedding from centuries ago, a forbidden love, a punishment carved into bloodline, a sentence that chained daughter after daughter to misery. Tasha saw it all, felt it all, suffered it all, and yet she didn't turn away, because she had ended it, because she had chosen love, because she had chosen freedom for those who would come after her. The ancestor's form flickered, dim, then bowed her head, not in sorrow, but gratitude. Tasha's spirit steadied, lifted, calmed. Below her, detectives whispered. Neighbors gathered, rumors twisted. But the truth? The real truth? It lived in that recorder. Still blinking, still on, still holding her final words. A breeze rolled across the backyard. Light, gentle, almost guiding. It nudged the recorder, pushed it closer to where the police stood. Just enough to catch someone's eye. A young officer turned, saw it, picked it up. Curiosity tightened his brow. He pressed play, and Tasha's voice, soft, worn, brave, filled the morning air. Every word a revelation, every breath a confession, every sentence a truth no living person could deny. The officers froze. Her husband collapsed into a sob he'd been choking back for days. Even the racist neighbor, the loud one, the one who pointed fingers, fell silent. Because this wasn't murder, wasn't crime, wasn't violence. It was sacrifice, pure, painful, and powerful. Tasha drifted higher, watching, listening, feeling waves of peace roll over the chaos she left behind. Justice didn't always look like handcuffs. Sometimes it looked like truth. Sometimes it looked like healing. Sometimes it looked like a woman choosing to break a chain no one else could see. Her family would be free now. Every daughter that followed, every love that blossomed, every life that was meant to grow without fear. The curse was gone. The weight was lifted. Her story, no longer a wound, but a legacy. Tasha turned toward the horizon, felt warmth pulling her forward, soft, safe, final, and with one last glance at the world she saved, she let go. Light opened around her, not blinding, not harsh, just warm, like the sun after a long storm. Tasha drifted into it slowly, as if the world beyond life wanted her to take her time, to breathe, to heal, to rest. Below, the backyard felt different now, less haunted, less heavy, almost peaceful. Her husband knelt beside her body, hands shaking, heart breaking, every breath fighting the truth he'd just heard. He replayed the recording again, and again, and again, as if letting her voice fill the air was the only way to keep himself from collapsing completely. The officers gathered close, silent, humbled, changed. One of them wiped tears before they fell. Another whispered a quiet blessing. None dared call this tragedy anymore, because they heard her truth, they heard her courage, her choice, her sacrifice, and they felt something ancient settle around the home, a release, a peace that didn't belong to this world, but lingered just long enough for everyone to feel it. It wrapped around her husband's shoulders, lifted his chin, softened his grief. He didn't understand it fully, but he knew one thing. She didn't die afraid. She didn't die alone. And she didn't die without purpose. Tasha hovered above him, close but not close enough to touch, watching the man she loved break and rebuild in the same breath. She wanted to reach out, to calm him, to tell him he did nothing wrong. But the divide between worlds held firm, soft but unbreakable. Still, he felt her, just for a moment, a warm brush across his cheek, a gentle hush in his bones. He looked up, eyes wet, heart trembling. He whispered her name, not expecting an answer, just needing to feel it leave his lip. Tasha smiled, a real, soft smile that carried no pain, because even though he couldn't see her, he sensed her, and that was enough. Detectives took the recorder, handling it like something sacred, because it was. Her truth would live far beyond that backyard, beyond rumors, beyond lies, beyond fear. It would protect every daughter born from her line, every love story they dared to chase, every future they once feared losing. The curse was gone, completely, silently, forever. Tasha rose higher, the world below shrinking, softening, fading. She felt her spirit lighten with each second, the weight of centuries falling off her like dust. And then she saw them, a circle of figures forming in the light. Women, generations of them, all connected by the same story, the same pain, the same curse. But now, they stood free, their faces lifted, their shoulders unburdened, their eyes brighter. They welcomed her with open arms, not as a victim, not as the last link in a broken chain, but as the one who ended it. Tasha stepped forward, the light folded around her, warm and endless. A gentle voice, older than any memory, echoed through the glow. You freed us. Her spirit steadied. You freed yourself. And that was the truth she carried with her as she crossed into the quiet peace she had earned with her final breath. The world below remained silent for a long moment, as if honoring her, as if listening, and then, very softly, the morning wind whispered through the backyard, a whisper that felt like goodbye, and gratitude, and love. Tasha was gone, but her story? It lived. The world moved on, but it never forgot her. Not Tasha, not what she carried, not what she broke. Her husband felt the first shift days later. The grief was sharp, raw, quiet, the kind that slipped into his lungs every morning and sat behind his ribs every night. But in the silence, he felt warm, small, gentle, unexplained. It would brush over his shoulder as he slept, linger beside him during sunrise, curl around the edges of his heartbeat just when he felt he couldn't breathe anymore. And slowly his pain softened, not disappeared, not erased, but softened, like someone was telling him, "You're allowed to live. You're allowed to heal." He kept the recorder, not to torture himself, not to relive her last moments, but to honor her. Her voice became his guide. Her bravery became his anchor. Her love, the thing that freed her lineage, became the force that lifted him back to life. He planted a small garden in the backyard, right where she fell, right where she rose. Lavender, white lilies, a single young tree. He didn't mark it with a name, didn't carve a plaque, didn't need to. The garden breathed her, carried her, held her. Every bloom was a reminder that love didn't die with her. It grew. The community changed too. The neighbor who once muttered racist curses under his breath walked slower now, looked quieter, spoke less. He never apologized outright. Men like him rarely did, but he felt the weight of the truth, the shame of the assumptions he made, the poison he carried, and for the first time, he tried to unlearn it. He left flowers by the husband's door. No note, no signature, just silence, a silent attempt at becoming something better. The officers who found the recorder shared her message at a community gathering. Not the whole tape, just the parts she wanted the world to hear. People cried, people prayed, some whispered her name like a blessing, and for the first time in generations, her family, scattered across cities and continents, felt a shift, a weight missing, a breath returning, a freedom they couldn't explain. Mothers felt lighter, daughters slept deeper. Women who once feared love felt a strange courage rising inside them. Word spread quietly, privately, but with power. Something had changed. Someone had broken the chain. In the world beyond life, the ancestors formed around Tasha. No shadows, no wounds, no sorrow, just peace. They walked with her through fields of light, soft, endless horizons where pain dissolved and memory healed. Each step carried centuries of release, generations of forgiveness, a whole lineage exhaling as one. The ancestor who once bore the first version of the curse stood beside her. Her form gentle, her presence warm. "You freed us," she whispered again. But this time the words echoed wider, deeper, carrying gratitude from every woman Tasha had never met, yet somehow saved. Tasha felt her spirit rise, rooted, whole, finally free. There was no more fear, no more echoes of old suffering, only light, and a future that belonged to every woman who came after her. And then, the supernatural aftermath began. Soft at first, subtle, like the quiet hum of a new beginning. The garden in the backyard grew faster than it should have. Healthier, brighter. The tree sprouted blossoms long before its season. White petals glowed faintly under moonlight. Not enough to start rumors. Just enough for her husband to pause and whisper, "Thank you." In her family's homes miles away, mirrors stopped cracking on their wedding days. Dreams stopped carrying warnings. Hearts stopped trembling at the idea of love. The curse was gone. its shadow erased so deeply that newborn daughters would never even know it existed. But at night, in the quietest hours, a warm presence drifted through the backyard. A soft glow brushing the tops of the lilies. A whisper of peace moving through the leaves. Not haunting, not lingering sorrow, but a gentle promise. I'm free. You're safe. Live boldly. Her husband felt it each time. A warmth that didn't scare him. A presence that didn't cling. A love that didn't trap him in grief, but guided him out of it. One evening, as the sun slipped into gold, he stood by the garden with quiet eyes. He closed them, exhaled, and for the first time since losing her, he smiled. Soft, real, painful in the best way. A breeze circled the garden, lifted a single white petal, carried it gently past his hand. He knew. He didn't need words, didn't need signs, didn't need proof. He simply knew. Tasha was whole, at peace, and watching over a world she had changed with her final breath. The garden swayed, the light dimmed, the wind softened, and in a whisper only the heart could hear, a final goodbye brushed the air. Not tragic, not heavy, just full. A farewell wrapped in gratitude, a promise wrapped in love, a final breath wrapped in freedom. And all that remained was the quiet truth. Some stories don't end in sorrow. They end in release. They end in grace. They end in the kind of love that outlives the body and heals everything left behind.